Good morning, gearheads. Welcome to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM. We are very excited. We have the Formula 1 Dutch Grand Prix coming up.
Dankjewel.
Yes. Max Verstappen fans there and all over the world are excited and got their orange on. This is John Massagale sitting in the studio in Austin, Texas with Jonathan Green and Les Kaiser, and we have Mr. Bob Varsha over Zoom. Good morning, gentlemen. How is everybody?
Good. Looking forward to this one.
Everybody's
doing great.
Everybody's looking perky and up like they've had their coffee this morning. I think
Yeah.
we're all getting settled into this early starts. It's fantastic. So let me start with you, Jonathan. What are you excited about for the Dutch Grand Prix?
I just love this track. I mean, it's like one of my Matchbox cars, or I mean, it's just like, I mean, it's an oval and it's not an oval, and it's got these slingshots and now a DRS zone. It's got gravel traps that aren't gravel traps. You've got an atmosphere like no other, and you know, I don't know if Bob will back me up on this, but the atmosphere yesterday was like Mansell at the British Grand Prix or Senna in Brazil back in the day, where literally you feel that everything that one guy does is being watched by the entire crowd and willing him on. When he got out of the car yesterday and got that pole, I mean, he says it doesn't affect him, and I actually do believe him because he's that kind of ice cold or ice cool. But my word, what a feeling for an athlete to have that. I mean, it's like a boxing match. You know, he's coming out, and all the expectations are absolutely purely on his shoulders.
You know, absolutely. Go ahead, Les.
I thought it was interesting because when we first saw Max come here, I swear, get into the seat, it seemed like you could look at him sideways and he'd get upset. Maybe it's just maturity that he comes in now. But, I'm all for it. I love seeing what he does. It was interesting, checkered flag talking about the home field advantage, so this should be interesting.
Well, let's hear from Max himself, see what he says.
Yeah, and I was never that good with homework back in the day, so I leave that all up to the guys. I'm the driver, they do all the stuff.
Well, how did the car feel today? Because it just looked like it had come alive.
We changed quite a few things, but also after FP2 we found out the car was rushed and a few things were not correctly set up. But no one's fault. It's just to try and get the car out. But from there on, I think we still had a few things to improve, and that's what we did. And I think the car was in a much better window already in FP3. And from there onwards, we tried to change a few more things. And in qualifying, it was good, but it was very tight, and you can see the dominance we had in Spa is not there anymore. You can see how quickly it changes again when you go to a completely different track layout, different downforce needs as well, that they are a lot closer.
Great turnout of your fans here today, but we saw a flare got thrown onto the track. Have you got a message for the fans?
Yeah, well, don't do that. I mean, it's silly. It's not good for yourself because you will get thrown out, so you can't enjoy the weekend anymore. It's not good for us because it's, of course, unsafe if they don't see it happening. It's nice to light a flare, but just keep it to yourself. And of course, again, to a certain limit, it's nice to have flares. But I think everything was taken care of very quickly. But of course, for tomorrow, keep them in your hands.
Are you okay to do that in Dutch as well, if that's okay?
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a smoke screen.
Yeah. No, that's a serious point behind all that. That's incredibly dangerous. I saw Toto Wolff kind of played the Mercedes car, which is getting tiresome in my opinion, saying it was targeting Lewis Hamilton.
Oh God.
There's no evidence for that I'm aware of. And they got the perp and sent him to the beach, so I'm good with that.
Yep. And there were actually two different ones. There was one on the other end of the track that didn't get caught on TV, but he was also removed.
Did they throw the pigeons out also?
Yeah, the pigeons were, I don't know what they were eating, but it's good.
I thought they had the best seats in the house.
There was one pigeon who stayed on the track as cars were whizzing by him. I mean,
I have to give a shout out to my co-com in Monaco, Alex Brundle. He said, I don't know what they're eating, but it must be really good for them to risk that much.
I heard that, Jonathan, on the F1.com feed. Yeah,
he's funny.
Well, Jensen
Brundle.
Button had the best line. Button said, you should never bring pigeons to a Formula One race.
That's good. That's good too.
Yeah.
Well, of course, Max
Funny stuff.
Verstappen on pole by what, 21 hundredths of a
nuts.
second?
Thousand.
Excuse, yeah,
Thousands.
that's right. That's right.
0.021.
That is that's crazy. You can attribute some of that to the short track, but still, that's just a stunning number.
There was another quote again from the commentators in qualifying. The Albon was less than a second away from pole when he lost out to getting into Q3.
Mm.
It's just nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. But it's cool, you know.
Very cool.
Especially coming on the heels of Spa, you know, where it's wide open, everybody's flat out, and cars are going straight more often than they're turning. You know, this track just undulates and short stretches, lots of turning, you know, and the fans, as Jonathan pointed out, are, you know, totally backing their man Max Verstappen, and they get closer to him than just about any other track you can think of, because this place is old. It was renovated, but there's very little space in little Zandvoort, and I think the result is spectacular. Kudos to Jan Lammers and his team who put this deal together.
Well, Les, you went, didn't you, in the early days of it
I
coming
was.
back?
I was there just before they did the reconstruction of the curves to add the banks and everything. And Zandvoort has a magnificent racing history.
Yes, it does.
And, you know, some of the things that I loved about it, the stories I heard from Jans and also heard from Price Cobb, was that back in the day, Zandvoort property itself was so tight and small, many of the team's trucks and vehicles could not make it in.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was kind of the culture of the community that the garages, the local garages, would host the racing teams when they came. And each morning before the race, you would see quite often the youngster of the team driving the race car through the streets of Zandvoort
To get to the track.
to the track,
that's
escorted by
wild.
the police, and you would see him
Sure,
going there.
Ferrari. You can park in my yard, Ferrari. That'll be fine.
Yeah.
You can just line those trucks up here.
Yeah. You got to feed them, though, as well, Bob. They like their breakfast and coffee.
There you go. Hey, Del Valley. Oh,
Yeah. Hey, we got a couple comments on YouTube. It's one of them says, Wesman says they were eating the pigeons were eating the grass seed that was put down. So that's a theory there too.
I thought that was the gravel trap.
Yeah.
Don't mix them up.
Kevin Kelly says something that I was going to talk about from qualifying. Says, is this going to be a three-way team fight?
Yes, it is.
Because, of course, going back to what you said about Toto, Bob, Toto was complaining that Perez, he was insinuating that Perez had crashed it in qualifying. Purposely.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. If he did that purposely, my word, he's very skillful.
Very skillful.
And very brave.
Yeah.
Very brave indeed.
I'm afraid
Entering
Toto.
that bank
yeah, that was a risky
Although
spot.
I will say, I was calling the race in Singapore when Nelson Piquet Jr. deliberately crashed his Renault to benefit Fernando Alonso and
I was
bring
there
out
that
a yellow
day.
flag. But yeah, it was that thought went through my head immediately when I saw that Perez had gone around.
That's so funny,
without
Bob.
hitting anything.
I was there that day, and I was underneath that stand because we were doing Formula BMW as the undercard, and so he actually rammed into our part of the stadium, and I turned to my friend and I went, "Oh, that's interesting. Alonso's leading," and I remember being that cynical at that time. And here we go. Yeah, it came to fruition.
Speaking of YouTube, you know how Andy P is our McLaren superfan. Well, I've noticed this. I don't know if you guys have, but we have a Haas superfan besides us. But it's
I'm
Drew.
A Gunter superfan.
Well, yeah. There's.
No, I'm not cheating. I'm Gunter.
There you go.
Drew is our Haas superfan, and he says, "What's up with Haas opposing the Colton Herta super license waiver?" And we're going to get all into all of that. And I had an epiphany yesterday that it's about time that we had a segment on the show that's all about American drivers on the race to a Formula One seat. And we're We're gonna find a sponsor for that. But we got a list that we always are thinking of in the back of our head.
There you go.
And Drew, we're gonna talk all about that. And
hey,
who's
talking about our regular fans? I want to talk about Kevin Kelly. Was it Kevin that posted his Miami costs?
Yes, I think so.
He basically got offered the same seats that he was in last year.
Yeah.
And to go out and buy them earlier. And I'm not giving Miami a hard time here. And this is America where demand, supply and demand, baby. They were a lot of money for the same seats that he paid for this year. So I'll find it. I'll go and drudge it out.
Yeah,
but,
I think he tweeted at us.
He did.
You can look at that.
It's out there.
Well, hey, speaking of sponsors, there's a new product coming to market that we're going to talk about in the post-race show. It's interesting.
Okay.
And it's Haas related. So.
Oh, that one. Yeah. I know
oh, that's right. Yes, I know what you're talking
about. The one that broke the internet on Thursday or Friday. Yeah, we'll talk
all
about
Gunther.
Yeah.
Well, and when I finally went and looked for it, I was like, that's timid. That's not. I could get a lot more T-shirts out of Gunther than that.
Well, any T-shirt with Gunther on it. I mean, it literally did break their servers.
Yeah.
They put it out and it broke the servers, and they were like, okay, we've broken the internet.
Wait, we've got that one quote. Can we put that on a? It was our interview. Can we put that on a shirt?
Not since Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I mean, I would have fucked the whole paddock.
That's great.
Yeah, wait a minute. That should be
that's ours.
That's our T-shirt.
Okay, yeah.
Right, we're going to start our own merchandise.
Casey, can you get on the T-shirt ordering right quick? We've got a break in a second.
Not since Arnold Schwarzenegger has a man from the Tyrol taken such a limelight for not actually being a superstar, but he really is. Gunther is the man.
Kevin responded just now on YouTube. He says, "Let's see if Mick Schumacher saves his job today." He did a good,
hell of a job in qualifying.
A great start on that. Hey, let's do a couple pieces of business. Let's give out the phone number. Everyone's so excited, I can't even get it in. It's 512-643-5483 if you want to call today during the pre-race or post-race show. And I want to bring in our correspondent who's at Zandvoort, Chris Medland is at the circuit, and let's see if he's got his earphones on. He does. Good morning, Mr. Medland. How are you?
Good afternoon, team. I am not too bad. You say, have I got my headphones on? I managed to forget some, so I've borrowed, I've got like some backup headphones. I've only got half a microphone, and now I am trying to hear you guys over incessant techno. So welcome to Zandvoort.
Is that a new type of techno? Incessant techno?
Incessant.
Yeah,
I would have believed at 4 days there it would be like that.
It's amazing. You don't get any respite from it here. I managed to get in nice and early for the F3 race today, which sadly both the F3 and F2 races didn't go the way of the Americans. I was here hopeful for Jack Crawford and Logan Sargent having big results, and both had difficult starts. Logan didn't finish. Jack ended up 6th in his race, having started much further forward. But on the way in, I managed to walk in when it was quiet, and it was so weird because I've only ever seen this place with a beat.
Yeah.
There you go.
Go to sleep at night hearing that beat.
And it's a gorgeous place. You're going to see it on camera. That they're like a quarter or 3/8 mile from the beach, and so gosh, Chris, I hope you get an opportunity to go put your toes in the sand.
Oh, I did that on Thursday actually. I did go down to record a podcast down on the beach, which was nice. You get some lovely sunsets here. It's a very well organized race for anyone who's thinking about traveling abroad to a European Grand Prix at some stage. You can stay in Amsterdam. There's trains every 4 minutes heading out to the circuit. So it's a very, very cool one to come to, but be prepared to essentially feel like you're in a nightclub for about 96 straight hours.
And bring your day glow.
Yeah. Well, we're starting to talk about it. I was there in 19 when happened to be there also when Red Bull was there, and Jan Lammers, we spoke about that. It's got a great history.
Yeah, imagine an entire country that are sort of have the enthusiasm of an A&M football game or a UT football game all the time.
Yeah, A&M football is rabid, and that's a good comparison.
It's the best leg and ball.
Hey, Chris, anything happening overnight that we need to know about besides the Americans in F2 and F3?
No, I did hear that you want to talk about Gunther Steiner and his comments about super licenses, and it wasn't just him, but we can get into that. I see Stefano Domenicali has actually said similar, even though he doesn't get a say in who gets a super license and who doesn't.
Which is ironic.
So yeah, we can delve into that a bit. There's been a few power unit changes, but no penalties. So Sergio Perez, after that spin yesterday, he's gone to an older power unit today. And Lance Stroll, after he couldn't get out on track in Q3, has done the same thing. So you've got both of those drivers starting in the top 10, but with old power units in the back of their car. But this isn't a power-sensitive circuit, so shouldn't make a huge difference. But who knows? Maybe reliability-wise, they might have to be a bit careful with those.
Yeah. The interesting thing about this track to me is the fact that used tires don't seem to have much effect on their pace. And I notice a number of teams have no fresh sets, particularly of the reds, which are going to be the softest compound, which is going to be, I think, critical in today's race. Some teams just don't have any fresh ones, but they don't appear concerned by that.
No, that's something I spoke to Mario Isla about last night, actually, where he points out that Max Verstappen does have a new set of soft tires left.
He does.
Because he breezed through qualifying. The first 2 rounds of qualifying, he just did 1 run in each. I think Q2, he used old tires for that as well. He was just so good up until Q3, but then it was very close when everyone was on the same age of tire. But Isla said, he hasn't seen any real difference between a new set and a used set in terms of the performance that they offer when you've only put a few laps on a new set. So he doesn't think that's actually a big differentiator between the drivers.
Well, I want to ask everybody. I want to start with you, Bob. And so what happened to this massive gap that Verstappen had last week? Is it all down to the circuit, or what do you think?
I would say if not all down to the circuit, it's certainly the majority of it is down to the circuit. I mean, there's horses for courses. Some of the cars are quicker in the turns than they are on the straights, like Ferrari, for example. It allows, it's not as power sensitive as Chris just mentioned. So some of the teams like Mercedes, who don't have an ideal aero setup, are able to get close due to the equivalence in engine power with the Red Bulls and the Ferraris of the world. So yeah, it's all the factors that come into play on a short, twisty racetrack like Zandvoort that has essentially closed up this field, at least at the front, with the top 3 guys all covered by less than a tenth of a second. There's something going on. Now, Perez would have been up there perhaps if he hadn't spun. All of that is what ifs. We're going to go racing a little while, and then you've got a whole different problem, which is getting through the first corner undamaged. And let's hope everybody does so we can have a straight-on race. But yeah, it's the short, twisty nature of Zandvoort and all of the track qualities with the dust blowing in from the beach and all that sort of thing that has closed up and made this a really interesting field in a lot of ways. And we'll talk about it later, maybe when I do the grid. But the fact that a couple of unloved number 2 drivers have outqualified their senior teammates, especially with those junior drivers, if you want to call them that, who have their jobs on the line, and they've outqualified the number 1 for their respective teams. It creates an interesting situation as we get down to these last few races, where guys in all forms of motorsport, guys and girls, are racing for the jobs and their careers as much as they are a contract for next year.
I think what interests me about today, weather aside for a second, we'll talk about that in a minute, but I think we you got a narrow track with not a lot of overtaking. We're really going to see the big 3 finally go for a strategy game. If, like I said, without the weather, but if it stays dry, then it really is a case of how do you use Russell and Hamilton, who, let's face it, didn't see the best of qualifying because of that incident with Perez. So we know that they're quick, so they're in the game. How are Red Bull and Perez going to work with Verstappen to keep him there? And how are Ferrari going to get past Verstappen, whether it be in the pits or strategy-wise? They've not been the best at it so far, but we are going to finally see these boys do their work strategic-wise.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Chris, what did you think about Toto Wolff's comments about the fact that Mercedes could have been on pole? I mean, it looks like statistically from the numbers, they could have.
Yeah, I mean, this is a track that has been kind of similar to Hungary in terms of car setup, which is obviously where Russell was on pole. So they were optimistic. I think the way that Hamilton's final lap was playing out, it was going to be close. he was going to be in that mix, but Lewis himself said afterwards that he thought it was optimistic to think he would have been on pole position. It was very, very tight, and it's one of those where you could say, well, yeah, you could see it if the wind was blowing in the right direction when he hit the pit straight, or if it was blowing in the wrong direction, that might cost him the half tenth that would have meant he was third. But they was very much in the mix, and I think because Mercedes have had the year they've had, they need to kind of take every opportunity they get, and on the whole, they have done that. But this is a weekend where they maybe felt if it all came together perfectly, we could be on pole like they were in Hungary. And it didn't quite come together perfectly. So they've ended up probably where you'd say they still are. But, they're right there with Ferrari and Red Bull, but I'd still have them as just that tiny bit slower than both teams, as close as the gaps are here. So, fourth on the grid for Hamilton is pretty much spot on. He's still ahead of Perez. So both of them in the top six, nothing's gone wrong there. It's just not gone as right as it could have. So I think what was just good was just having it so close between all three. And it was a shame that Checo dropped it, because it would have just been great to see the final gaps being all so close between them.
All right, gentlemen, we are going to be very close, a little closer to the start of the race when we get back, and we're going to have Bob run down the grid and lots more action after this.
Hi, this is Gene Haas, and this is Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM.
CrowdStrike presents Driven in 60. Our digital world is more than just interconnected, it's interdependent. And because of that, security is a top concern for every organization. The Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula One team knows they're a potential target for a host of digital attacks, which is why they leverage the CrowdStrike Falcon platform to deploy end-to-end security solutions. CrowdStrike revolutionized cybersecurity by harnessing the speed and power of the cloud to identify and stop the most sophisticated cyber attacks. Our cloud-native Falcon platform protects and defends organizations against increasingly complex threats, so you can have the peace of mind to focus on your business momentum, not what's trying to stop it. That's protection that powers you. To learn more and to try CrowdStrike Falcon free today, visit crowdstrike.com/XM. All right, guys, we are 35 minutes away. Les, you want to give a shout out to the East Coast folks?
Oh, yeah, it's really cool. Hey, we love, for one, we're on every social media outlet we can get onto, but got to say good morning to Sean Bird out in New York. I think he's part of the New York F1 watch teams and watch crews that we connect with. So love hearing from you. Thanks for sharing.
Ah, nice. Well, we got Chris Medland out at Zandvoort, and we got Bob Varsha here over Zoom, and Les and Jonathan. Bob, we were talking in our pre-production call about the French term force majeure, and I thought we might touch on that topic, because it's one of those business topics that being
I like
a
it
lawyer,
with cherries and chocolate on it.
being a lawyer, you probably ran across that. But what do you think about all of this, Bob? It's kind of crazy.
Well, yeah, the whole force majeure concept in regard to the efforts by Colton Herta to get a Formula One super license, which you absolutely must have. He is 8 points short of the necessary total, with no chance of getting them now, predictably in this IndyCar season. So that the idea has been kicked around that, well, we really want an American driver in Formula One. There are teams who would like to have Colton Herta. So can't we kind of argue that the pandemic created a force majeure, that is a act of God, something out of anybody's control, that might allow us to kind of nudge Colton Herta up into the points he needs to get that super license. And that's created a buzz in the pit lane for sure. Fred Vasseur at Alfa Romeo and Gunther Steiner at Haas were two of the team principals who said, no, look, we've got a rule. We can't start fudging with the rule, or what's the point of having a rule? We're not looking at Colton Herta as a driver. So, we don't want to start, plucking guys out of other series who aren't by the rules qualified for that super license. Look at the kids you got in Formula 2 and Formula 3 who are working their way up, doing it by the rules. It's unfair to them if we just get one particular superstar and try to parachute him into Formula One. And, you've got to admit there's a lot of truth to that argument. But be that as it may, this Colton Herta thing is going to bubble on for a while.
Oh, Bob. Oh,
I rest my
please.
case, Your Honor.
Yes, that is my honor. If I could take the stage for a second, I want to remind my learned friend that Formula One is about money. And frankly, if you've got, as we believe, close to 30 million as a backer, then I'm afraid that's why this talk is. And unfortunately, Gunter's not in this game for the 30 million that might be coming with said Colton Herta. So I think that's possibly why they're not in for that moment. And I think, but you know what I'm saying is that's why people are wanting to bend the rules. He is very good, but he also brings with him a stack of cash.
Yeah,
Don't take the law into your own hands. You take them to court.
Exactly.
And Chris Medland was right in the middle of all of that yesterday. And Chris, I saw you tweeting about this topic. Let's hear your take.
Yeah, I hope you guys can still hear me because it's got very busy on the grid. But yep. I needed to defend because I saw Conor Daly and Alex Rossi were saying that they're so sick of it seeing Steiner and Varsha go against getting culture a super license, yep. And that the team principle of the American team not helping the American driver. But I actually agree with their sentiment, which has just been very eloquently put. But it's not that Colton shouldn't be in F1. The problem lies in that IndyCar isn't awarded the points it deserves towards a super license. You can finish fourth in the IndyCar Championship this year, so you're one of the 5 guys that are currently going for the title. And if you finish fourth in IndyCar, you score the same amount of super license points as the driver that finishes fourth in Formula Regional, which is essentially Formula 4 in Europe. So, I mean, it's just not comparable. They've got it wrong. So they need to address that. But before that, can you really retrospectively turn around and go like, okay, well, we think this person's good enough, or is this person not? That becomes a much grayer area. And what both Varsha and Steiner said were, we don't think you should just go, well, this guy looks like he's good, so we're going to give him a super license and ignore the rules. But we should accept that the rules maybe do need changing so that we don't get these issues in the future, because IndyCar drivers are very good and deserve 7th, 3rd, and 5th were his championship finishes, wins in every season. That deserves a super license. So that's kind of where some people were taking just the argument and saying, well, no, he shouldn't get it based on the points he's got, or he should get an exemption. And I do put it to everyone listening that the IndyCar series didn't stop. So Colton had the opportunity to score points during the COVID pandemic and get the super license points that he needed. Now it's hard to get them in IndyCar, but he was going to go and race.
Yeah,
Alex Palou currently does have enough.
Yeah,
right?
I do struggle to see where the grounds for the exemption is.
Sorry, Chris, didn't mean to interrupt. But am I right in saying that Alex Palou does have enough points?
Have them. Yeah, the IndyCar champion automatically gets enough points. And if you're second, you get 30 of the 40. So essentially, if you're in the top 3 2 years in a row, you're guaranteed one. If you win the title, you're guaranteed one. If you're second and about 4th, I think, you're guaranteed one. But once you get into 3rd and 5th and anything below, that's when the points are too weakly stacked. So that's what needs addressing. But
Chris,
I do understand their point that there's not really an argument for the exemption.
Yeah, what you're talking about is exactly what I cut and pasted into our show doc and what we were talking about yesterday about how the points lay out. When we're sitting there looking at that Formula 2 gets so many more points. But at 3rd place, they get 40 points. IndyCar only gets 20, double the points in Formula 2. And if you were to ask, I mean, virtually anybody in motorsports, the 3rd place, in Formula 2 versus the IndyCar champion that are comparable, I don't think anybody would agree with that.
I think it is. I totally agree with Chris as well and yourself that this needs to be addressed because times are changing. This isn't Bernie's Formula One. Indy has a lot of talent in it, and we're losing a lot of talent in Formula One, from Rossi to Ericsson and so on and so forth. Rosenquist in the middle of this, and obviously these young guys like Pato O'Ward and Colton Herta and so on. And I think there should be some parity, and like you say, points-wise, if we're going to have a system by the FIA and Formula One, it's got to work across the world, not just like Chris just pointed out. The other thing, the other force majeure, or could be concluded in this, was that Colton Herta, before he joined Indy, was an Indy Lights champion. Because there were only eight players, if you will, 8 cars in that championship, the Formula One decided it wasn't enough competitors to afford the points. They needed more drivers. And again, that's not Colton's fault.
Yeah. Fantastic point.
I think
no, that was an FIA decision, and also they have changed that.
Oh, they have.
I was going to say, sorry, they have changed that since, so that there's a minimum number of drivers that have to start, but for every driver below the minimum number, you lose 10% of the super license points. So instead of it being a hard and fast, either it gets points or it doesn't, it's now a sliding scale. But that's come in since that incident because they looked at it and gone, okay, that's a bit harsh on those drivers. We need to address it for the future.
Interesting. Good stuff.
Yeah, what were you going to say, Les?
Yeah, I think that's really something that has lagged behind. And I'm with Alexander Rossi on this one, that IndyCar is so respected. It's not just a free-for-all to get a seat there. We've seen quality drivers. I mean, Connor Daly, keeps winding up at the edge, inside or outside the gate. And so I think it's very quality. I think it's time that FIA really considered it and go even further than these last changes, to be honest. But
yeah, because they're the governors of world motorsport, not European motorsport.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
World motorsport.
Indeed. And one of the reasons that Formula 2 gets so many points is because they're trying to create a path for young drivers to show this is the route that we pay for Formula 1. Now, that's fine, but IndyCar is not a pathway to Formula 1. It's not a feeder series, so it needs a different weighting than it's got. And previously, they've kind of let it lag behind F2 because they, in a sense, I think, didn't want drivers going over to IndyCar instead of Formula 2. But as we've seen, that doesn't happen. The level is too high in IndyCar for a driver to be able to go F3, I'll go and race in IndyCar to get some super license points and then get to F1. That just won't work. So that's where that disparity's happened. And I think F2 can remain as high as it is. IndyCar just needs...
Yeah, agreed. IndyCar needs to be turned up. Well, guys, we need to pause. And coming up after this, we are going to talk about something we haven't talked about yet, and that's Piastri and the official announcement. And we're also going
Piastri.
That's
we're also
what I
going to
love
hear
with chocolate.
Bob Varsha walk us through the grid after this. You listen to Speed City. Back after these messages.
Hi, this is Max Verstappen, and you're listening to Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM.
The Speed City F1 pre-race show on SiriusXM is brought to you by CrowdStrike. Stop today's most sophisticated cyber attacks at the office, the racetrack, and everywhere in between. Learn more at crowdstrike.com/XM. All right, guys, when we went to break, I said we were going to talk about the Piastri announcement. Bob, let me start with you and get your take on how all that went down. It's very fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm surprised it took the contract recognition board as long as it did to make their announcement, because apparently they voted unanimously, although I think I'll get to the reason in a moment. No, I'll get to it right now. They ruled that not only is Oscar Piastri free to drive for McLaren, they ruled that Alpine has to pay everybody's expenses to the tune of about $625,000 US dollars, which is striking, including a 1,000 British pounds an hour for these lawyers who make up the board. What it is the contract recognition board was Formula One's arbitrator, if you will. They agreed they didn't want contract issues to go through a lengthy litigation process. So the teams all got together, said, okay, we'll get 3 lawyers that we all agree on. They'll see all the evidence, presentation from the parties to whatever the problem is, and whatever they decide, we all agree to abide by. And as we saw in this case, it took just a couple of days for the board to rule that Piastri had an agreement in place with McLaren before Alpine announced that they wanted to take up his options. So he was free to go, and Alpine has to open their wallet.
Jonathan, do you think that the British lawyer fees are so high? Is it those horsehair wigs that they wear?
That's a lot to do with it, yes.
Okay.
It's actually how much they drink in the bar afterwards. That's really where the fees come in.
It was not a cheap bill. I'll tell you one thing I learned as well is that Alpine tried to argue that Piastri didn't deserve representation in that and had to pay his own legal fees that were 6 figures as well, which was very quickly dismissed by the board. But I'll tell you what, as we're on this topic, I'm going to grab Zak Brown because he's right in front of me. And Zak, you've had a win this week already with the Oscar Piastri CRB decision. How happy are you to get Oscar on board?
It's great just to get it all behind us. I mean, we thought this would be the outcome, but so you get the official word now.
All right, dang.
We know what he was saying.
Wait, he's still trying to say it. But
that's what's important to us.
Yeah. The
sorry about that, Geds.
Yeah, the crowd, the grid has gotten so crowded.
Nice to get off the track, but
guys.
Really want to get going on the track. I don't think.
Yeah, I tell you, that just takes me.
Yeah.
That takes me back to the 80s and 90s and Max Headroom right there.
No, but the gist of it was yes, he is obviously very happy. And now I've read, there's a story by Jonathan Noble as well, they're coming across this morning, just basically saying that this it was a lot simpler than people perhaps give it merit, and that Webber has acted very well here in that, frankly, unless Alonso had suddenly jumped ship as he did, Piastri wasn't going to get a drive. And they didn't have a reserve contract or a race contract in place. So they wanted both a reserve contract and they wanted a race contract as a potential, or at least the opportunity to go and seek a race contract. So Webber's played this well. Piastri's gone down with having, been unloyal and all the rest of it by lots of disgruntled team managers. But actually, he hasn't done anything wrong. He's just been represented very well by a former race driver.
I will pause you when you say he hasn't done anything wrong, and I just really want to get y'all's opinion on this because I haven't really thought it through. I think I was listening to Peter Windsor, and he was really upset about the lack of loyalty with Piastri. He'd been given this opportunity by Alpine, and
testing miles, simulator.
Yeah,
work.
exactly. A lot of investment into him. So, what do you think about that, Bob? I mean, it's definitely a topic to be discussed.
Well, you can make that, morality argument, for lack of a better phrase.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some truth to that, but there's nothing, it's totally without legal support. I mean, let's face it, this is the Piranha Club. This is a business. Yep. If a driver is cut, it's not personal. We just, you're not getting it done for us, yada, yada, yada. So it's, I don't think it's unfair. I don't think arguments that people aren't loyal really hold a lot of water. Yeah, it's a shame that it is so cutthroat, but that's the fact. And I agree, there's a story to be told about what Piastri's gotten himself into, because he's leaving a team that he knew like the back of his hand in Alpine. And now he's going to go to McLaren. He doesn't know the car, except he knows that both Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo don't like it. He's going into a strange team. They're welcoming him, but he has so much ground to make up in what is essentially Lando Norris's team now that, he's really cut himself a rough piece of cloth in terms of, trying to make a coat to wear at McLaren. So, I know. Yeah, well, all due respect to my old friend and colleague, Peter Windsor, I don't think loyalty enters into it, frankly. It's a matter of I do the job, I get paid, I risk my neck in these race cars, and if I see a better opportunity somewhere else, I'm going to get it, and nobody can deny it. Just ask Daniel Ricciardo about losing the final year of his contract. Where was the loyalty there from McLaren to him?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to say, just one thing on that. Loyalty. How many times do we see a team not really express that loyalty when a guy has a dip in his performance? That blade can cut both ways.
Yeah, that was my good point. Hang on a minute. Red Bull.
Yeah.
Hello. Was Liam Lawson the guy you've nurtured for so long? You gave a Friday drive to last time out. Why is he not in the discussion? Armstrong just won a race this weekend, Ferrari Academy. Schumacher this week pulling out of Ferrari Academy, the guy that the team that nurtured him to this point. So I'm sorry, but there is no loyalty.
Everybody on YouTube is pretty much everybody's saying Alpine treated Oscar poorly. Drew says. Nobody more loyal in the grid than Haas's own Pietro. That's a good one. Alpine left a bad taste in my mouth, says Drew. Everybody's agreeing with you guys.
Glass houses.
Yeah, and you know what? The old saying, all's fair in love and war. And you know what?
And Formula One.
And by the way, that's something that's gone on back to the Senna, Prost, all the way back in history of Formula One. Loyalty is only as good as the opportunity that presents itself.
Yeah, and great discussion. All right, guys. Hey, we have the rest of Chris's. He hit the record button, so we got the rest of that interview with Zak Brown. Let's hear
Zak Brown.
Let's speak about today then, finally. I mean, you've got Lando starting well-placed in 7th. Daniel had another tough qualifying with some issues in his session, but what do you think you can achieve today? Because if we talk about Alpine once again, they're not in the top 10 right now.
Yeah, we got to capitalize on where Lando is, and then Daniel, I think we got to play with some strategy or pit stop sequence to see if we can maybe get him up the grid, help him a little bit, because it's hard to pass around here.
And just finally, if I can ask back on the Oscar topic, but it was something that Otmar Szafnauer said yesterday. He said on Monday, Alpine will decide whether they move forward with Oscar this year. Are you hoping that you can get him in as part of the team earlier than next year?
Well, ideally, once you've announced the driver, you'd like him in the following day, but he does have a contract with them, and we honor contracts, so it's really for them to sort out.
Okay, we'll see how that goes, Zach. Thank you very much.
We honor contracts except for the one with my current driver.
Exactly.
But actually, they did. They obliged. They bought him out.
That was
the exit clause.
They bought him out.
All right, gentlemen.
Sorry,
we got to get a break in, and immediately after that break, we're going to have Bob Varsha walk us through the entire grid. You listen to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM. Back after this.
I'm Jenny Gow from BBC F1. You are listening to Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM.
All right. Welcome back. We got everybody awake and ready for Bob Varsha's walk us through the grid. Take it away, Bob.
All right, here we go with thanks to our friend virtual statman Sean Kelly. On row 1, Max Verstappen, the crowd darling for Red Bull, his 4th pole of the season and 2nd straight at home for the runaway championship leader. He has 9 wins in the 14 races thus far, and he's going for his 4th in a row, something he hasn't done this year. Next to him, Charles Leclerc for Ferrari. You probably saw him shaking his head in scrutineering after qualifying, just 21 thousandths of a second off of Verstappen, which is about 2 feet in distance on the track at these speeds. That's the narrowest margin of the season thus far. 7th time in 15 races, those two have shared the front row. And Leclerc was shaking his head because his best 3-sector times would have put him on pole. On row 2, Carlos Sainz in the 2nd Ferrari, less than 1/10 of a second behind Verstappen's pole time, just less than 3/4 of a 1/10 of a second, 72 1,000th from Leclerc. And he starts 3rd for the 6th time this season. Next to him, Lewis Hamilton, whose team boss Toto Wolff said the Mercedes #1 was up 1/10 of a second on the front row pair when the late yellow came out in Q3 by his teammate, and it cost Hamilton the pole. As it is, the 7-time champion is more than 2/10 of a second behind Sainz, the man he starts next to. On row 3, Sergio Perez, who spun with a lap to go in his Red Bull. He's also the fastest car in the speed trap at just over 205 miles an hour, which takes some doing on these short straightaways. His spin in the final corner, the final lap brought out the yellow, and that killed several drivers last lap qualifying, not just Hamilton's. And he's about 3/4 of a second behind teammate Verstappen. Next to him in the 6th spot, George Russell for Mercedes. Only one finish outside the top 5 all year long. That's just amazing, except for one occasion, and that was at the British Grand Prix. Mercedes, remember, was 1-2 in free practice on Friday, so they are legit. On row 4, Lando Norris for McLaren, whose starting position matches his ranking in the Drivers' Championship. He's kicking on that door of the big 3 teams, but it just hasn't opened yet for him. Mick Schumacher in the Haas starts next to him. What a drive for the German. With his future in doubt, he outruns his teammate Kevin Magnussen, has his 4th top 10 start of the season, and best starting position in a dry qualifying session this year. ironically, he went a couple of places better, was sixth in wet qualifying in the Canadian Grand Prix in Montreal. Moving on to row 5, Yuki Tsunoda for AlphaTauri, another driver who has got to step it up in these final 8 races to keep his seat. And he did beat his in-demand teammate, Pierre Gasly, and avoided Q1 elimination for the first time in 3 races. Next to him, Lance Stroll in the first of the Aston Martins, unable to compete in Q3 due to a technical issue, but a great run in qualifying nonetheless. And he has his first top 10 appearance since Montreal, his home country, 10 races ago. He and Sergio Perez, as we've noted, are both using replacement power unit parts, but it's from their pool of homologated pieces, so there's no penalties involved. On row 6, in the 11th spot, Pierre Gasly for AlphaTauri. Isn't it great when art imitates life? Here he has Gasly is tipped as an Alpine driver next season. The Frenchman misses Q3 for the 7th straight race, and he's going to start next to the current Alpine driver, who apparently wants no part of Gasly in the team. That's Esteban Ocon, who is not on Gasly's Christmas card list, although they may wear the same colors next season. That's going to be fun to watch at the start. On row 7, in the 13th starting spot, Fernando Alonso for Alpine. Surprisingly underperforming, let's say, in qualifying. There is no Alpine in the top 10 starters a week after they were the 3rd quickest team on combined times at Spa, beating Mercedes. They had both cars in the top 6 at the last 2 Grand Prix. Nobody knows where the Alpines have gone. In the 14th spot, next to him, Zhou Guanyu of Alfa Romeo, who outgunned his veteran teammate Valtteri Bottas again this week, which is an achievement, and hopefully firms up his drive for next season, because the Chinese rookie has had quite a year. On row 8, Alex Albon for Williams, who survived into Q2 and qualified for the 4th time in 5 races. Good on him. Next to him, Valtteri Bottas for Alfa Romeo. After 148 consecutive Q3 appearances going back to 2015, the Flying Finn is eliminated in Q1 at the 2nd consecutive race. On row 9, Daniel Ricciardo in the McLaren, another driver who could use a solid run in qualifying. Instead, he was out in Q1 for the 3rd time this season. Next to him, Kevin Magnussen for Haas, who was puzzled after qualifying. He couldn't understand where his car's pace went. He was out-qualified by his embattled teammate Mick Schumacher for the 2nd race in a row. Neither Ricciardo nor K-Mag survived Q1, while their young teammates are both in the top 8 on the grid, which I think is really interesting. And on row 10, the final row, Sebastian Vettel for Aston Martin. Certainly not the way the retiring 4-time champion wants to go out. His 6th Q1 elimination in the last 7 races. And next to him, Nick Latifi for Williams, who was the slowest driver in qualifying for the 3rd time in 4 races. So, gentlemen, start your engines and be careful down there in the Tarzan corner.
But just before they do start their engines, I've managed to sneak in behind a potential future Formula One driver here in the pit lane, who is actually filming the scenes out of the pit wall, because it's Nick De Vries, so this would be his home race if he was racing. And he's in Mercedes gear, so I'm just going to grab him for a quick word before I get kicked out of here. But Nick was just talking to David Coulthard in the pit lane. And I'm just going to grab Nick. I mean, amazing scenes from the fans here. It's incredible, your home crowd.
Yeah, I won't deny that I'm a proud Dutchman to see this.
But I bet you'd rather be out there racing right now. I mean, what likelihood do you think that we see you out there next year here?
Well, I hope it becomes real, but it's not in my hands and it's out of my control.
What do you get told? Do you just have to wait for someone to pick up the phone call? Do you get given info on talks that are going on? What happens?
Well, I mean, I think everything has been very dynamic recently, as everyone could see and read. And yeah, I think there's still a lot happening. So time will eventually make things a bit clearer.
Well, and just finally, you're wearing Mercedes gear because you're a big part of this Mercedes team. Are they in a mix for the win today, do you think?
Pardon?
Do you think Mercedes are in the mix for the win today?
Well, it was a shame that obviously Lewis got caught up by the yellow flag, because that obviously would have made it a little bit easier. But I think we've been strong this weekend, and yeah, maybe if things work in our hands, then we can have a shot at it.
I'm not sure the fans will love that, but it would be great to see. So, Nick, thanks very much. Cheers.
I want to know what the Dutch and the Danes are feeding their young people. There's so many people. I mean, on a per capita basis, the Danish, the land of Tom Christensen and K-Mag and everyone, and the Dutch, who have guys like Robin Freins and Nick de Vries and Max Verstappen. Where are these drivers coming from? It's amazing.
Per capita, you're absolutely right.
You're
it's not even close. All right, hey, Chris. Chris got another interview while he was in No Cell Land, and he caught up with Otmar. Let's hear that.
Otmar, we'll start with the less fun part, the Oscar Piastri situation. You lost out on him, I guess, in the CRB decision. What did you take away from that, and what happens next for Alpine?
Well, the next is we got a race in front of us, so we got to get both of them in the points. Try to get even further away from McLaren in the championship, and as for Oscar, it is what it is. We respect the decision of the CRB, and we move on.
Does the hard work start tomorrow in terms of trying to line up future drivers?
Yeah, the hard work starts tomorrow, but it's not so hard. I think we got the most sought-after seat in Formula One.
Yeah, that's very, very true. But right now, that seat hasn't got you in the top 10. How tough is it going to be to get there today on a track like this?
Well, it's overtaking has proven to be difficult here, although the DRS zone has been increased to help with that. And so if that's the case, it'll have to be a matter of strategy or the start.
Is this a short-term pain race, though, for you? Because you guys will be strong at Monza, won't you?
Yeah, well, we're strong here, too. If you remember from yesterday, Fernando was on a lap that would have taken him to P5, and Sergio got in his way. So I'm not concerned.
Okay, well, good luck. Thank you.
Hey, Chris getting a little spicy with Otmar. I like that.
That seat didn't get you in the top 10? Hey, Mike Bowles, wake up. You got to get up here early.
Been nicer.
Say again, Chris?
I was just saying he's had a tough week. I should have been nicer, but it's been the finest week for Alpine. So,
hey, we got the comment of the show by Drew on YouTube. He says, "Let Herta do a single race against Latifi to settle the super license problem."
Yeah, I like that. I like that. At a track of your choice, or iRacing or something. You know?
How about duel in Dubai?
A duel in Dubai. I like it. And also on YouTube, Mike Bowles has just joined us, and he overslept. So sorry about that, Mike. Get up earlier next time.
Yeah, what the heck, Mike? Get out of bed.
Get with the program.
I don't know. Who knows? Maybe he's in California. Maybe it's early.
Our buddy in Thailand's still tuning in, though.
Yeah.
Back to Herta, hey, what if there were ever something like that you had a driver duel somewhere?
Hey, guys, we are down to the wire. My producer just yelled in their ear. So let's get our picks in. Let's start with you, Les Kaiser.
Oh, I'm going to go with Max all the way, Leclerc, and then, after that, hand in heart, I want Ricciardo.
Okay. Jonathan?
Max, Leclerc, Hamilton.
Okay. Bob?
Verstappen, Hamilton, Leclerc.
And Chris Medland, can we get your picks?
Yeah, Max, Leclerc, Sainz. I was going to say Lewis, but someone already took it.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'm going to say Max,
Great minds think
Lewis, and Russell.
Ooh, yeah.
A little spicy Mercedes for you guys. All right, well, we got less than a minute left. And, of course, you stay tuned right here on the ESPN XTRA Channel 81 for the entire race by the BBC crew. Who's doing it today, Jonathan? Any change in the lineup? Do you know?
I don't. I haven't. It's Jenny Gow. It's the usual team.
The usual gang, okay. Because I know they had your buddy Brundle on the
F1, yeah.
On the F1
Alex was doing that, doing a great job.
But yeah, of course, the post-race show right here, we'll have a full hour with Bob and Chris and all of us. And write the phone number down because we want to hear from you. And we may be giving away some tickets. The phone number, 512-643-5483. All right, everybody, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for everybody tuning in on YouTube as well. And we'll talk to you after the race.